All right. Today I'm sitting here with River Zurinsky.
Yes.
Is that it? And he's running for District 2 council person in this upcoming election in August. Do you remember the actual date for
August 26th.
August 26th? Yes. So yeah, I figured we could start out by, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'd love to. So first of all, hello everybody. My name is River Zurinsky. I'm a lifelong resident of not only Florence, but a lifelong resident of District 2. I've lived in District 2 my whole life since I was born at ECM Hospital in 1999. At 18 months, I was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. At that point in my life, I'd lost all my words except for mama and dad, and it took me several years of therapy to be able to relearn all my vocabulary back. And I know what it was like to not have a voice. And that's part of what inspired me to go into politics, because I wanted to be a voice for the voiceless. And not knowing what it was like to have a voice taught me that my voice is a gift from God. I'm a Christian. My faith is something that's very important to me. And I wanted to do something that would be able to bless others in my community, which is a big reason why I'm running. Now, a couple more things about me. I'm a stalwart storm spotter for the National Weather Service. I've been doing that since 2021. I live stream severe weather coverage for Lauderdale, Talbot, and Franklin counties, as well as Tishomingo, Alcorn, and Prentice over in Mississippi, and Lawrence, Wayne, and Hardin up in Tennessee. Whenever we have severe weather, you can go on my Facebook or Instagram pages and watch me track the storms. I wanted to start this as a service to the community because I believed that I could provide something that the Huntsville people weren't providing, which is a street and landmark specific coverage to the shoals with my vast knowledge of the area. I'm also on the Florence Beautification Board, and what the Beautification Board does is we judge the landscaping of local businesses, and the top 30 properties at the end of each year get a black plaque with gold letters. So if you've ever walked around our downtown or driven by a business that has one of those plaques, that's my board that made the determination to give that business that plaque.
All right, cool. Let's see here. I guess you kind of mentioned why you were introducing yourself, some of the reasons why you decided to run for District 2. Could you tell me what your vision is for District 2?
I have a pretty extensive platform for anybody that has read my Times Daily article or seen one of my flyers. I have really 10 things that I'd like to do, and I'll be addressing several of those things throughout this interview. But really, I want to be a representative that is always there for the people. I think that's the most important thing. For too long, we've had a representation to where the average person, that lives in Florence, couldn't even get in touch with their representative. Or if they could, it took weeks upon weeks. And I understand that not a lot of people, have time to go to council meetings. And so, just going to the council meetings, people need, to be able to get in contact with their representative by other means. And I'm somebody that has a proven track record of being available day or night for my community. Just this past week, there was a line of storms that came through that prompted several tornado warnings. And I was tracking the storms between 2 and 4 in the morning on my Facebook and Instagram pages. And I think that my record as a stalwart storm spotter for the National Weather Service proves that I will be there for my city at all hours of the day I'm needed.
Cool. Yeah, I can, just throw in a little bit from me, I can attest that you to your dedication and your willingness to show up. I know very few people, including myself, that have showed up to more council meetings and engaged. So I can attest that you're definitely an engaged citizen. I can only assume that you would be an engaged council person as well. Mentioned District 2. Do you have an overall vision for the city of Florence?
There are several things I'd like to do, and I'll go through some of them now. A big priority of mine is going to be improving McFarland Park. It's something that, when I talk about my story growing up, We live on the hill overlooking McFarland Park. And so when I was growing up, my mom would take me down to McFarland Park many days after school. And I remember many afternoons where I would play on the playground at McFarland Park growing up and then stay and watch the sunset. Watching the sunset over the Tennessee River was something I could connect to as I was relearning my words and my vocabulary because my name was River. And so that's something that meant a lot to me. I loved the Tennessee River. I always have. And after the sun went down, I would be fascinated by the McFarland Park Lighthouse when it would come on and all the pretty lights at the top of it would shine. And I remember many nights where, I would come into Florence, we'd drive over O'Neill Bridge, and that lighthouse was always a symbol, for me to know I was home. And the last 5 years, the bulbs in the McFarland Park Lighthouse have been burned out. And the first thing I'd like to do if I'm elected is to replace those light bulbs so the lighthouse can once again be a beacon to our city. I also want to put a dog park in McFarland Park. I want to put a skate park, a splash pad, and an amphitheater in McFarland Park, and I'm going to touch on those things for a moment here. So for people that don't know, and I attended the McFarland Park Town Hall that the city did back in 2022. From what I understand, at that time, the city had a $10 million fund that we specifically got to improve McFarland Park, and over half of that is left right now. And I want to use that money to fix our lighthouse and to add those things that I just mentioned. I feel we need a dog park because there are many dog owners like myself that need a place to take their dogs for them to be able to play and to interact with other dogs, because not everybody has a fenced-in yard. There are many people that live in an apartment that may just have like a little balcony, and that's all they have. And so a dog park, I feel, would be a great addition to our downtown. I also believe that a skate park would be a great addition because, first of all, we have the Sportsplex, just down Savannah Highway from McFarland Park. And right now, our skaters don't have a dedicated place to be able to skate. They do have the one skate park that's out on Cox Creek, but that's very inconvenient for many of our downtown residents to be able to use that. And we have skaters that are, skating down Court Street and in the parking deck, and they need a dedicated place to do that where they can have tournaments and be safe. And so I also think that the tournament aspect would be a great addition to our city because we're already having great success with softball tournaments and baseball tournaments at our Sportsplex, and I see the potential with a proper skate park in downtown and with the convenient location next to our Sportsplex to bring in skate tournaments, and I think that'd be an additional stream of revenue for our city. I also want to talk about the other two things I mentioned, the amphitheater and a splash pad. So with the amphitheater, we already have our Spirit of Freedom celebration that's massive every 4th of July, and I feel that having a proper stage would allow us to bring in more artists throughout the year to McFarland Park. I also feel a splash pad would be a great addition to McFarland Park because it gives something for our young kids to do in the summer. If you have a long day, whether you are on the river, maybe on a boat, or, you have a picnic in McFarland Park and it's the middle of July or August and it's 90 or 100 degrees, it will give our kids especially a place to run around and cool off and beat the heat. And so I think the splash pad would be a good addition also because of that. Now, besides McFarland Park, I want to fix our pedestrian signals. That's the second priority of mine.
Citywide?
Yes, okay. But it's particularly an issue that District 2 is facing because the majority of our downtown intersections are in District 2. Back in 2023, I already addressed the council about some of our intersections on both Court Street and Tennessee Street where we either had malfunctioning buttons or we had lights that were burned out. And I will say that the intersection of Seminary and Tennessee and the intersection of Court and Dr. Hicks, those intersections were repaired after I gave my speeches back in 2023. And I encourage people to go to my Facebook and my Instagram pages. I made videos at the time talking about that issue. You can find that under my Reels section. And so I encourage people to check those out later. And the pedestrian signals are still an issue. The intersections of Mobile, Tonbidby, and Tuscaloosa Street on Court Street, those 3 traffic lights don't have buttons for a pedestrian to push and trigger the light to change. And based on my research, the buttons run about $2,200 each. And again, it's like we cannot spend this small amount of money to improve pedestrian safety. That's the attitude that our current council has, whereas they want to spend $9 million, for example, on a pickleball complex. And to me, if I get elected, I want to do these small things, such as relighting our McFarland Park Lighthouse and making all our pedestrian signals work properly, because I believe it's the small stuff that we need to prioritize, because that's what's being neglected. And those things are what matter to our citizens the most, especially our citizens that live in downtown. And with our pedestrian signals, I think about the elderly. I think about people in wheelchairs. I think about people that have young children and toddlers that might dart across the street. And we need proper working pedestrian signals so, families with small kids and people in wheelchairs and the elderly can stay safe. Now, besides fixing our pedestrian signals and my improvements to McFarland Park, there's 2 other things I'd like to touch on. I want to raise our police officer salaries, and I want to build a fire station on Darby Drive, as well as raise our firefighter salaries. Up until the start of the term of this city council, and I believe that this was at the end of 2021, so it was about 2 years into the term of this current city council that this finally got addressed. But Muscle Shoals had been paying their police officers more than Florence was. And so it's important to me that we have our officers motivated to stay working for Florence PD. Officer retention has been a problem with the Florence Police Department for several years, and we need to make sure that we're offering them a competitive salary so they can build a career here and connect with the community. By allowing our officers, the proper salary, they will stay. And in turn, that really helps with community policing. Because when you have officers that are longtime officers, people recognize them. And, when they're out and about in the community, people, will say, "Hey, officer, so-and-so." And that really helps, when responding to a situation, if the person, that's calling, has a relationship with the officer. And so I want to promote community policing. That's going to be a big priority of mine if I'm elected. I want to find ways where our police department can better interact with the community, whether that's at events like First Friday and Arts Alive, or whether it's things like Coffee with a Cop. I want to give more people, opportunities to interact with our police department, and I think that will help. Especially with our youth, I think, building a good relationship and building up trust with our police department will help discourage crime. And so that's to be a huge priority of mine. And another priority of mine, like I just said, a fire station on Darby Drive. So as it is, we have 6 council districts, but we only have 5 fire stations. District 4, and obviously I'm not running in District 4, I'm running in District 2, but I'm going to be a representative that will look out for the needs of the entire city. District 4 doesn't have a fire station like the other districts do. That's the district that has River Hill School in it, it has Divert Park, it has the Children's Museum, and it has Florence Mall. And again, I'm friends with some families that have kids that attend River Hill School. I know many people in my district that regularly go to Divert Park to walk around or to fish or to go to the playground. And especially with the Children's Museum, it's a place where our children, regularly visit. And the mall. Our mall is a heavy trafficked area. And all those places, as well as the many residents that live in District 4, deserve the same great fire coverage and same great response times that the other 5 districts have. And so that's to be a priority of mine, to build a fire station in District 4.
Well, that's definitely a thorough answer.
Thank you.
If there's one thing you are, it's thorough. Just a side note, I know it might be kind of bright, and you're probably sensitive to light. You're welcome to wear your shades if you want, or if you're comfortable like this.
This is fine.
This is fine? Okay. Not saying anything, just,
I think before you ask your next question,
I know
this
it's
is
bright
where
in here.
this is where I want to address my eyes for a second. So part of having autism, and this is just the perfect segue to talk a little about my
I
struggles
wasn't trying to
with
be
autism.
disrespectful at all.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
But I want voters and all residents of Florence and the Shoals to learn a little about autism throughout my campaign. That's one of my goals.
That makes sense.
And so
Yeah.
I want to talk a little about that. So it's kind of a double whammy for me. Not only do I have autism, I'm a blue-eyed person. And so I love my blue eyes. They're absolutely a beautiful color. But, I have less pigmentation with the blue eyes, compared to people that have other colors of eyes. And so that, in turn with my autism, makes my eyes super sensitive to light. Because what's common with autism is that it heightens the senses. So my eyes are extra sensitive to bright light. My ears are extra sensitive to sound. I got asked at Youth Government Day why, I'm not regularly at sporting events, and that's because I'm super sensitive to sounds like whistles. Like the high-pitched tone it just sounds louder to me than it does to the average person. And so I have to, just be careful to, if I'm going into a loud environment, wear, earplugs, and I have to wear sunglasses. And when I'm outside, it's very common for me to wear my sunglasses like this. And so I want everybody to understand that, that's just a couple things that go along with having autism, but I can assure you that it will not, hinder my work if I'm the next city council representative for District 2 in any way.
I would like to interject a couple of things regarding that. First of all, I just wanted you to be comfortable. That's
Absolutely.
I wasn't trying to say one thing or another.
Sure.
Also, I don't have autism, but I feel like I am somewhat of a sensitive individual as well. I was a very sensitive kid and stuff like that. And for me personally, what I can say is I consider myself a relatively creative person because of this. I feel like there's some drawbacks and there's some gifts that come with this.
Sure.
As with heightened sensitivity, you're able to observe details and maybe have a different type of vision of what you're observing and what you're thinking about than others. On the other hand, with the increased sensitivity, the world can seem a bit much at times. So I can relate. I just wanted to relate with you on that. Sorry, this isn't about me, it's about you, but I'm just throwing that out there.
I appreciate that.
I'm going to go on to the next question.
Sure.
What would you say the difference, how should I say this? How would you differentiate yourself between you and your opponent, Hendricks, that you're running against in Council 2?
Well, that's a great question. So I think it's a multiple-part answer. So I'm going to give you a couple answers to this question. Firstly, I've been involved with local politics for longer than Jackie Hendricks in terms of going to city council meetings. Prior to the passing of Dick Jordan, and my condolences are, with the Jordan family over their loss. But prior to the passing of Dick Jordan, I was regularly attending Florence City Council meetings and speaking. And again, I encourage people to go back on the city's Facebook page and also on the Florence, Alabama Open Meeting Project YouTube channel. You can find many of my speeches at council meetings from the last several years, and I'd love it if anybody that's watching right now would go back and watch some of my speeches. I've been at this for several years. Hendricks was not showing up at council meetings, whereas I have been for several years making speeches about issues that mattered to me and the residents of District 2 and the residents throughout the city of Florence. And I feel that I have the proven track record of standing up for the needs of our citizens and being active in the community by attending city council meetings. That's part one. Part two, my opponent was the deciding vote in getting rid of our majority black council district, and that's something that is super sad to me.
You're referring to the redistricting.
Yes, I am, and let me talk a little bit about that. So every 10 years we have the census, and I know that many of you are aware of the census because, whether it's by phone or online, you fill it out, or whether it's even a census taker coming to your door. It's something we do every 10 years, and following the census at the national level, They have to redraw the U.S. House of Representative districts in every state following the population shifts. And at the local level, they have to redraw city council and board of education districts, with the population shifts, just like they do with the representative districts at the national level and at the state level as well. I say all that to say my entire life we had 5 majority white districts and 1 majority black district, because that fairly matched the population of Florence. And that still would be the most fair composition, because Florence is just over 71% white, and Florence is about 19% black. I believe it's 18.7% exactly African American population here in Florence. And the fairest composition would be 1 majority black seat and 5 majority white seats. And now, again, you have to make sure when you're redrawing the lines that every area that you have in each of the 6 districts is connected. You can't have any part of a district that's broken apart. But in saying that, District 1 went from 52% black all the way down to 40.5% black. And Jackie Hendricks had the deciding vote in that decision. Now, I not only made a speech urging the council not to pass the map that was submitted by NACOD on January 21st of this year. Not only did I make a speech, I was the only private citizen to draw my own proposal for the council districts. And my District 1 proposal would have prevented it from becoming the 6th majority white district. And again, I believe that 6 majority white districts do not represent the population of Florence. And I want every citizen of Florence to feel like they have a representative that they can go to that will address their needs. It's important to me that we have an African American representative on both our city council and board of education. And if that's important to you, again, Jackie Hendricks was the deciding vote to get rid of our majority black district. And the last thing I will say as to what differentiates me from my opponent is that I called for a special election last summer following the passing of Dick Jordan. I made speeches, urging the council, to give us a special election, yes. And Jackie Hendricks just took the seat without giving the people a voice. And I think it's time that the people have a representative, and I pledge to be that if you give me the opportunity to be your next representative for the city council seat in District 2.
Yeah. I must say I was around during all that, and it did seem like Jackie kind of popped out of nowhere. And you've been doing this for a while, so
yes.
I can definitely attest to that. Here's another question. It's another thing, a little kick that I'm on or whatever like that. But then I'm asking everyone this just for reasons. What do you think about the relationship between UNA and the city of Florence government?
A few things. So first of all, UNA does play a vital role in not only the population of Florence, but also our local economy. I can tell you that many UNA students walk up to 7 Points, to the mini shops in 7 Points, and they walk to the mini shops in downtown Florence as well. My mom teaches for the University of North Alabama. That's something that I'd like everybody to know. But with my mom, teaching for the University of Alabama, that's not going to have, any say in what decisions I make on the city council. But I say that to say that, I grew up around the UNA students. Many, UNA students, became friends of mine. And I can tell you that, some of my classmates that I went to school with, took my mom's class, following, graduating high school. And so, it was always really cool, to have some of my friends go on to take my mom's class, because, I had, that connection with them. And my mom and me, I guess I should say my mom and I, but we, have hosted the UNA Art Club for a couple times at our house. And again, in hosting the art club, the students mean a lot to me. They do. And, my goal, if I get elected to the city council, is going to be to, prioritize, the needs of the students, in particular, because the students are what, drives our local economy. They, increase, our population. And, dollars from UNA students are critical to our downtown businesses, and they're critical to our businesses in 7 Points. And it's a big reason, why we're able to have, so many of these small businesses in 7 Points and in downtown. It's because we have the UNA students spending money and supporting them. And I believe if we didn't have UNA, that, we wouldn't have several of the small businesses that we have here in District 2 and downtown in 7 Points, because those additional dollars, especially following the COVID-19 pandemic, have been critical to our small businesses staying afloat. Now, I say that all to say that, everything that I get as a member of the city council that would come before me, on the agenda, I'm going to, prioritize, the needs of the students first and the residents of District 2, as opposed to just saying yes to everything that, that I might hear that UNA, might propose. And again, UNA has many, good things that they bring to Florence. But also, I don't believe that that everything that UNA, has put before the council and will put before the council is something that we should automatically just say yes to without thinking about the economic impact, either positive or negative, that it would have, on the city as a whole, and also thinking about the needs of the city as a whole, like when it comes to something like Pine Street. I know that the Pine Street redesign is a hot topic right now, and I believe that when we are, deciding what to do about Pine Street, we not only need to look at, the students of UNA and making sure that they're safe, crossing the street, and that's why the pedestrian signals, again, are a big part of my platform. We also need to make sure that whatever we do, can hold the proper traffic count, and so we can have cars flowing smoothly between 7 Points and downtown. And so one option that I would like to look at for Pine Street, since I did bring up Pine Street, I'd like to look at reducing the speed limit or maybe putting in speed cushions. And I also would like to look at the ideal of another traffic light. I went to WC Handy Head Start, then I went to Kilby Laboratory School, then I went to Shoals Christian, and I graduated via Faith Academy's homeschool program in high school. And I can tell you, when I was going to Kilby, there was, and this is a sad story. I don't know if I've ever shared this publicly, but there was one morning that I didn't end up going to school because me and my grandmother, who was driving me to school that morning, we were pulling in about 7:40 a.m. for her to drop me off at school, and a car hit us on Pine Street. And so that was a really scary experience. I remember I was okay, thank God, but I remember I had to go to ECM that morning, and I had to get looked at and get x-rayed. And it's a problem. Look, I understand that, with Pine Street that something has to be done. But like I said, I want to take our time. I want to, make sure that we have the best solution to handle the traffic count, to make sure that pedestrians are safe, and to make sure that parents that have students at Kilby, are, able to go in and out smoothly, and their kids are safe that are, getting out of the car, to go to school or to get picked up from school at the end of the day. And so I think when it comes to the Pine Street project, we need to take a little more time. We need to, just look at all our options, not just, what's currently on the table, but we need to explore some more options. We need to get it right. And again, that's what I will do if I'm elected to be your next city council representative for District 2 in August. I'm going to thank out everything that UNA or anybody puts on the table. I will explore all the options, and I will, talk to the proper people, and I will make a decision based on several factors, and not just what's in front of me.
Okay. Well, it's definitely an answer. I think you probably know some of my views on some of this UNA stuff, but now it's not the time or place for that. As long as you're considering different perspectives, that would be great. Just throwing that out there.
Absolutely. And again, I think being a student at Kilby, I know, that there are many people that are watching this video, that had kids that went to public school or they attended public school. But I think, being a student at Kilby, and I went to Kilby kindergarten through 6th grade, I think that in particular has set me up to handle the needs of District 2, because I saw firsthand just how dangerous Pine Street was. Again, me and my grandmother had a wreck on Pine Street, and again, it was a very scary experience to have to go to the hospital instead of school that morning and get x-rayed. And I want to make sure that UNA students are safe, and I want to make sure that, again, as I said, that traffic can flow between Pine Street and, between Pine Street where it comes out of downtown and it goes to 7 Points and vice versa. And again, 7 Points in downtown, those are the areas in District 2. And so I will be definitely looking at the needs of downtown and 7 Points. And again, that's why I'm talking so heavily about downtown and 7 Points, because I have
That's
looked
your district.
Yes, that's my district. And I understand that, like the District 4 fire station, I'm trying to meet a need, with that proposal to make sure that all our city has the great fire coverage. But, I have tried to look at every issue that's mattering to District 2 and to make sure that I have a plan for it and a solution.
Cool. I was wondering maybe we could spend some time talking about transparency in local government.
Absolutely.
As you may know, that's a big thing of mine. It's sort of like my whole thing, mostly. Part of this interview is me with transparency between our city government and our potential elected officials and the citizens. This past few years that I've been observing the city, they used to not live stream the work sessions, but now they do. There's been some improvements to local transparency, but I feel like we still have a long way to go. Sometimes, I'm just speaking from personal experience, it's like trying to squeeze blood from a turnip or blood from a rock, however that metaphor goes, to get information from our local government and stuff. But I've been persistent and stuff, and I would like to see people elected to the city council that are fully committed to transparency. Currently, our local mayor has Facebook comments turned blocked on the Facebook live stream. When pressed on it, he doesn't say anything. He just, I think that's not right. I would, first of all, I'd like to know if you would support getting those Facebook comments turned back on. Second of all, I'd like to hear maybe your opinions on transparency in local government and some ideas you might be able to implement or try to champion.
Well, I have a few ideas when it comes to transparency in local government. First of all, I would absolutely support turning the comments back on. It's essential, and I believe it's a First Amendment right for people to be able to comment on issues relating to their city. The First Amendment says, we have free speech. The First Amendment also says that we have freedom of assembly, and we're able to, make our voices heard when it comes to the government. And look, as somebody with a disability, I understand, that there may be people with disabilities as well as senior citizens that would like to have input at our city council meetings but aren't able to attend. There are also people, that are at home with kids in the evening or at work during that time, and they need a method to have their voices heard. And I think that it's a shame that the comments got turned off on Facebook, because that was a method during the meetings for people to make their voices heard that couldn't be at the council meetings physically in person. So I absolutely would support turning the comments back on Facebook, and that's something I will work to do if I'm elected. But a couple other things about transparency, and this is one thing that you didn't specifically mention, but I know that, in seeing, your work for the last couple of years, it's something that you've brought up at a speech at a council meeting before. timely releasing of the agendas.
Yeah.
You know, it used to be that sometimes we would get an agenda 2 hours before a council meeting, and that is not enough time for members of the public to go through, like, sometimes as many as 30 items that are on the agenda and thoroughly read every one of them and, get a good understanding of what is being voted on. And I also don't believe that's enough time for the members of the city council to go through every one of them, because sometimes it is as many as 30 things. And I want to make sure that members of the public and myself as a city council member are going to have time to go through the agenda and read every item and have a good understanding before the day of the meeting. My hope is to release agendas a week before the meeting. I know that's a big goal, but I believe with careful planning, it's something that can be done. I want to give residents 7 days to look at the agenda, to study it, and to be able to form an accurate opinion. And myself, if I'm elected to the city council, I want to have that time to form an accurate opinion of what's being voted on. Now, besides the agenda, there's one other thing I want to mention when it comes to transparency. Our city council meetings used to be on Comcast Channel 3. Now, I know it's different when it comes to satellite versus cable, but I can tell you that with our cable providers, when Comcast came to Florence, they dedicated Channel 3 to be a channel for local affairs. That was what Channel 3 was reserved for, and it still is reserved for today. And so I want the city to lease the time back on Channel 3 to not only have the council meetings on traditional TV like they used to be, but to also have the work sessions on traditional TV. And I would also like to lease an additional hour to have the Board of Education members in their meetings on Comcast Channel 3, because I believe when it comes to decisions made about our schools and when it comes to decisions made about our city on the city council, that as many people as possible need to have the opportunity, to view those meetings. And there are many people that, that have TV that don't have Facebook or are not on social media. And so I want to give them that avenue to view the city council meetings just like people that are on social media have Facebook.
Yeah, obviously I'm a little biased when this is concerned. I'm definitely for transparency, but I think that's best for the overall good. I feel like, I've said this before and I'll say it again, I feel like a democracy can only work if the voters are informed. How can the voters be informed if they're not seeing what's going on? You mentioned the Board of Education. There's also other committee meetings and stuff that I try to hit. If I wasn't there, the rest, the public wouldn't see it. Would you promote those various, like utilities, finance committees, meetings to be filmed and live streamed as well?
Now, when it comes to committees, I do want to touch on that. I believe that with committees, it's important that that the time is released of the committee meetings before they happen. Now, I will say that, and I'll give an example of the storms that we had last week, since that's fresh on everybody's minds. Like, I'll use just the utility committee as an example. Now, with some of our committees, I believe that we'll be able to do the week's notice that I would like to bring to the city council meeting agenda to some of our committees. I think the majority of them will be able to implement that, and that's something I will work towards if I'm elected as the next city council member for District 2. But when it comes to the utility committee in specific, especially in days in March, April, and May, we do have severe weather. It's normal, in North Alabama to have tornadoes this time of year. And so when a severe storm or a tornado moves through the area, it may do damage to where we have to have an emergency utility meeting or we have to reschedule a utility meeting. And so I cannot promise specifically with the utility committee that I can guarantee the 7-day window, because again, especially when it comes to severe weather season, and not just tornado season, March, April, and May, but also during the winter months, because we've had, the last couple of years, we've had snow, a big snow a couple times the last couple of years. And, that resulted in, our street department and our utility department having to do a quick response. And so what I would say to you is my goal will be with all the committees except for the utility committee to give the 7-day notice for when the meeting will happen, and so the public can be informed. With the utility committee, I just think that they have to be ready at a moment's notice so that they can restore power and clear the roads as quickly as possible when we have snow or whether we have tornadoes that bring down trees.
How about the city recording and live streaming them as well?
That's something I would support. Again, the only one that I'm just not making promises, known as the utility committee, because again, with the utility committee, it's something that I believe is just not going to be feasible a lot of the time, because it's important that they just quickly respond when we have blocked roads or down the power lines, and so hours matter. And we obviously don't want to leave people in the dark, and we don't want to leave our roads impassable. But for all the utility committee meetings that it's possible to record, I'm in favor of that. And all the other committees, I think, will have no problem implementing recordings for.
Well, River, at this point, I don't have any other questions pre-planned. I think you mentioned that you had something you wanted to perhaps announce or
Yes,
say.
I have two things that I want to touch on before we conclude this. And again, first of all, I'm thankful to you to have this opportunity. And yes, there's two things that I want to say before I end our conversation. First of all, and this is the first time everybody's hearing about this, I am going to be hosting a town hall on July 12th at Companion Coffee Roasters on Wood Avenue in 7 Points, and the doors are going to open at 6 p.m. for that. And so I would encourage everybody to follow my Facebook and Instagram pages. You can find me at Zurinsky Star, and this is all together, all lowercase. That's at RIVERZURINSJYSTAR. That's where you can find me on Facebook or Instagram. And you can also email me at electriverzurinsky@yahoo.com. Any questions you might have that you would like to ask me, or if you'd be interested in being at the town hall. Now, I'm still working out some of the details for the town hall. I'll be able to say a lot more when it gets closer to time. But I'm looking at the option of putting a Google form up on Facebook to where people can submit questions, and that way I will not have access to the questions in advance. And I think that just like I did with this interview, I think it's important to be able to take questions off the cuff. It's an option that I'm looking at. And again, I understand that not everybody may have a Google account, and you are more than welcome to email me questions as well. But I think that that's going to be the fairest way to do it, and I would ask everybody closer to time, whether I put up a Google form, which is what I'm currently looking at, or it ends up being like another form or another method, I would encourage everybody to fill that out, and that will be on my Facebook page closer to time. Just give me a few more weeks as I'm working out the final details for the town hall. But I'd encourage everybody to fill out that form and to RSVP to be there. I'm really hoping that we can fill up the room, and I'm looking forward to meeting citizens of District 2 and taking people's questions on July 12th. And look, if you have a question you'd like to ask me before July 12th, I check my email every day, I check my Facebook, and I check my Instagram messages every day. But I want as many of y'all that would like to come to join me for the town hall on July 12th. And, I hope to answer many questions and to meet many of y'all then. I also try to make every first Friday, I'm going to, try to make Arts Alive, go into Arts Alive and go into First Fridays. There's something that's very important to me. So hopefully y'all will see me there. I'm also going to try to make Studio 23's market that's coming up. And, I'll be walking around that hopefully. And so if any of y'all see me at any of those things, feel free to stop, say hello, introduce yourself, and ask me any questions. Now, lastly, and this is something that, I would like to conclude on. I'm a Christian, and I've made my faith in God an important aspect of my campaign. I believe that it's important to love your neighbor as yourself, and I believe it's important to love our children. And one thing that I wanted to talk about is during these last 5 years, multiple times I've had the absolute privilege to march with a group called I Stand Against Bullying that is run by a local educator, Trinita Owens, and local radio personality, Tanya Carter. I absolutely adore them, and I've made it a priority of mine to march against bullying because I got bullied a lot growing up. As an autistic person, there were things that, that I did differently, and that resulted in me getting bullied. And it's a personal cause to me to be a good example to our youth and to everybody, but especially to our youth, because I want to show others how to treat people with kindness, how to love, and how to treat people with the respect they deserve. And as your next council member, I want to be very active when it comes to our children. Again, I try to set a good example for our kids, and I want to be somebody that, our kids especially, can look up to, and, that they feel, just excited about, meeting, taking pictures with, shaking hands with, and somebody that they feel comfortable, talking to about their needs. I think that me running is a unique opportunity to, elect someone from the next generation to where not only are you getting somebody who understands what it's like not to have a voice and, who has had to deal with the struggles that come with autism, but somebody that understands the needs of our children. And one other cause that's very important to me, and I have to make sure to touch on this before we conclude, getting yellow signs at our school bus stops. I have a friend named Jared Caldwell, and he has an autistic son, and obviously that's something that means a lot to me. Being able to do something for our citizens with autism, that's like a major goal of mine, because I want to show people that, I may have differences, I may have things that I struggle with, but I can be a good leader for our city. I'm fully capable, just like everybody else is. And I want to use my strengths, such as my fine attention to detail and, my dedication to local government, to be able to serve our city as your next council member for District 2. But in saying that, Jared Caldwell's son has had issues when it comes to getting on the school bus in the morning and getting off the school bus in the afternoon because they live on a heavily trafficked road. And I want to have a yellow sign at every school bus stop to show drivers that may be just driving through Florence, whether it's, tourists, that are visiting Florence for the first time, or, families that, are just, in a rush and they may not be thinking where the school bus stops are. I want them to have those yellow signs as a clear, visible reminder, like when the school bus is not there in the morning and afternoon, they'll pass those yellow signs and they'll see throughout the day the exact locations of the school bus stops, so they will know where to prepare to slow down, and that will drastically help our kids be able to safely board and exit the school bus. And so that's going to be a big priority of mine. But being there for our children and loving your neighbor as yourself is what I would like to do, if nothing else, as the next council member for District 2. And thank you so much, Mr. Carson, for giving me this opportunity to speak to everybody today.
Well, I'd like to thank you for taking time to come down here and do this. I would like to say now that anyone else, any other person running for elected office is welcome to do one of these interviews with me if you would like, another opportunity, another way, another pathway, another channel to communicate with the public, so that it's an open invitation for anyone. Even if we strongly disagree, I will sit down and I will give you as much of an objective interview as I possibly can. I'd like to thank you for coming down. And yeah, this has been it's been a great interview, and I think that's all I got. I will include the contact information you mentioned, either attached to the video or in the comments, or maybe both.
Yes, please include my Facebook, Instagram, and email. That'd be wonderful.
I will do that. And you have a nice day, and see you around.
You too.
All right, cool.